All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will call the special meeting of the Board of Education to order.
Okay.
First thing on the agenda is the pledge, so if you all join me, right? Say the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we'll have a roll by the secretary.
Yeah. Here's good.
Christopher Abel,
Here.
Biff Hansen,
Present.
Matthew Phipps,
Present.
Keith Shaw,
Here.
Matthew Spalding,
Here.
Carrie Trask,
Here.
Tony Bostelica.
Here. Thank you. Because there's a primary focus this evening, I felt that it was appropriate to invite public input, provided public input kept the focus to the items on the agenda this evening. Our first public input comes from somebody who could not be here because they are out of the country. So they have asked that I read this. I'll do my best. Haven't done a read aloud in a few years, so.
We'll break.
Yes, yeah, feel free. Dear board members, my name is Kerry Sweetman. I am the current PTO president at Jackson, as well as a para at the school as well. I would love to be there in person to deliver my remarks today, but I'm currently out of the country with my husband and kids, attending my husband's master graduation in the UK. I would love to say that I'm enjoying my time with my family, which, don't get me wrong, I am. But currently, all I can think about is what awaits me when I get back home, the future of my school and the other neighborhood schools. I say my school, emphasized, because that's what it is to me. When I was younger, I attended Jackson. I spent my entire elementary school time there. Some of the teachers that are still at Jackson are the same ones I had or saw walking the halls and teaching classes when I was there. When I decided to start a family of my own, I knew there was no other option than to send them to Jackson. Between the staff and the building itself, it has always been like a home away from home. I knew my children would be taught by amazing teachers and have the support of every staff member there. It was during the very beginning of COVID that I was asked to take on the PTO president role for our school because if someone didn't, it was more than likely the PTO would have folded. I had no idea what I was doing, but with the support of the old PTO president, support and encouragement from every staff member, I took charge in the position and took charge of the position head on. Jackson now has one of the best and thriving PTOs in the district. If Jackson is closed, I will not be taking my PTO experience to another school. I cannot speak for the rest of my PTO board, but I can't be expected to happily shut my mouth, move my student to a new school, and start over again. My son did his entire elementary school career at Jackson and is now at Wilson. My daughter is currently at Jackson going into second grade. My son and daughter consistently compare their experiences at Jackson. They talk about what teachers are there now and the ones that have come and went. They talk about activities they did in the gym, art, music, to see if their experiences match up. For the board to even consider our school and the neighboring schools to close is a complete disgrace. We have families that have went out of their way to come to what the board and superintendent have deemed a destination district. They have bought homes close to these schools so their children would have the experience of walking or biking to school. Parents themselves have the amazing opportunity to walk to school with them. I started at Jackson 2 years ago as a para part-time. I decided early on that I loved working with the students and staff. Last year, I requested to be moved to a full-time para position with the stipulation that I would only take a position at Jackson. We have many staff at Jackson that currently have their own children enrolled at Jackson and many other staff members that have their children move on from Jackson to Wilson and Lincoln. For many of the staff that have students at Wilson, it is amazing to have them be able to walk to Jackson after school. Those staff members are not scrambling to find after-school transportation since Jackson gets out later. The thought of staff not having to deal with this on top of relocating to a new school is insane. I would like to address the deterioration of the buildings for a moment. I agree our building needs many things addressed and fixed, but that is not the fault of our students, family, or staff. That is on the district. The excuse, the superintendent before didn't look into these things, and the current board is blaming its predecessors is completely ridiculous. We have had a behavioral student 2 years ago throw a rock through our office window on the front of the building. The district fix for it for months was a piece of plywood and 2x4s. It was not until I mentioned the same window during a PTO advisory meeting with the superintendent that the window was even addressed. We have had major sewer problems at our school that have resulted in our gym being closed and having to serve lunch to kids in the hallway. The sewer problem got so bad last year that we had fecal matter flowing into the fourth grade classrooms during the school. I love the PTO and what it has become to our school. I love my job at Jackson, sitting around while the district plays Russian roulette with my children's, students, staff's futures equally in a big way. This is currently something that is looming over our heads like a tornado just waiting to touch down. I've heard from many families that have reached out to me through the PTO asking how they can help or what the PTO is doing to make sure the board hears our voices and concerns loud and clear. I told them it's hard because I feel that no matter how hard we yell or how hard we fight, and now no matter how much emotion we put into defending our school, a good portion of the board just sees Jackson as a dollar sign and nothing else. We are a number in the machine, and that is it. Thank you for your patience on that.
That was good.
We'll now go to those that have requested time. The first one I have is Karen Hansen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And if you see me do this, it means you have about 1 minute, okay?
My first time here.
Oh, no problem. I just try to help you know when you're at that point.
As a mom of two MPSD students, I'm here tonight to ask you to slow down the process of planning for needed building repairs. Right now, Mr. File has made a proposal to close an elementary school to address
the issue of building maintenance and repair costs. I can imagine this problem feels especially pressing as the overall costs have come to light more recently. However, since the problem of our buildings took decades to make, I think it's worth taking appropriate time and consideration to solve. Whenever districts are faced with the prospect of closing schools, it takes many months of meticulous planning and consideration, much more than a session of brainstorming. This board should form a committee to closely examine data, generate more specific costs, not projections, seek community and staff input, consider other consolidation and non-consolidation scenarios which were still not provided tonight. Not to mention considering community reception to the plan and the monumental tax increases that lay ahead in phase 3 of this plan. One critical thing that's missing from Mr. File's plan is students. Schools are simply buildings without students. Neighborhood schools like the one my kids attend are special to the community. The pride our students and teachers have in their schools and its impact on achievement should not be underestimated. Speaking of student achievement, I'm left wondering why Mr. File and this board have hurried from that issue and onto this one. Surely there is much work to be done in increasing student outcomes. And I fail to see the learning benefit to increasing class sizes, lowering student and teacher morale, and disrupting routines with a school closure. Anyone with a true stake in this would understand that. As for the sheer cost of this plan, it'll take a great deal more effort to gain taxpayer buy-in. Not only are there hidden costs to closing schools, like ongoing maintenance even when one is decommissioned, but the extremely modest savings by closing schools pales in comparison to the monumental cost of the phase 3 referendum in 2020 or 2040, which is $286 million. And I'm not even sure if that is in 2040 adjustments. And if it's now, you can only imagine it's going to be more expensive. Taxpayers are already not pleased with the increase in their tax bills this year. And I cannot imagine how this would go over in the future. Last year, Mr. File and this board went $2 million over budget for SFA. So I'm very concerned about his ability to accurately budget and be accountable for many millions more. There's a saying I really appreciate: measure twice and cut once. At this moment, I'm left wondering if Mr. File and this board have done due diligence in measuring even once before carefully and accurately considering the wisdom of cutting a school from our district. Slow down and do the job right. Thank you.
Next, we have Christine Shabasta. Hope I said that right.
Christine Shabesta, 504 Pine Street. My child goes to Madison Elementary School, and I will be the Madison PTO president starting this school year. First of all, I'd like to say I walk my daughter to school, and no, I don't want to trade our 10-minute walk to stick her on a school bus for 30 plus minutes. I really value our walking time. But that's not why I'm against this proposal. I'm against all the questions this proposal doesn't answer. Where does the alternative high school go? Which elementary schools would be closed exactly? Where are those students going? Hypothetically, this plan closes 2 Northside neighborhood schools, but fixes up a school on the outskirts of the South Side to send some to send some of those schools, or to send some of those kids to sounds like a plan that isn't keeping the community at the forefront of thought. Close 2 beloved Northside neighborhood schools, and you're alienating future support this board will eventually seek. Some more creative problem-solving needs to go into place. Other than, here are the 2 oldest schools, let's close those. What about building a new school where Jackson is, like what was done with Jefferson? I don't think a pass it now and we'll figure it out later is a plan a responsible school board should pass.
Thank you. Next, we have Amy Wergen.
Good evening, I'm Amy Wergen. I live at 4303 Deerfield Lane in Manitowoc. And by the looks of the room, I think I'm probably close to the oldest person. I'm going to give you public input tonight. And I'm doing that because I have lived in Manitowoc all my life. I'm a product of the Manitowoc Public School District. My son is a product of the Manitowoc Public School District. And it's very important that the public have some sort of say in what's happening related to our schools. First, thank you for this public meeting with giving people a chance to talk. Thank you for slowing things down a little bit because I really think that this is one of the most important decisions you as a board are going to make in your tenure. Manitowoc has always had neighborhood schools, and historically, I know it's probably time for us to have less neighborhood schools. I watched birth rates falling for many years as my role of a public health nurse in Manitowoc County. So I know we have a whole lot less kids now than we did 20 years ago, and so we probably do have too much infrastructure. But it's also very important that we put that infrastructure where the children are and not put the infrastructure in the places that are most convenient because it might be a little bit less expensive to use those newer buildings instead of the older buildings. So please take your time and look at what is important for the kids related to the elementary schools. Something you're not discussing right now, but I think I just want to put it in a little earworm in, is Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School is the most beautiful high school in the state of Wisconsin. To fix it costs about a third of replacing it. Why would we ever think of spending that much money to replace something that is so loved by our community? And so please, please take that issue off the table and really look at what we have to use it to the best of our ability. There are going to be people who are going to know if you do things like close Lincoln High School, close neighborhood schools, and so really work at getting community buy-in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And last, we have Barbara Post.
My name is Barbara Post. I live at 825 Wilson Street, Manitowoc. And I was here 2 weeks ago and I talked about communication and collaboration. And I was just appalled when there was going to be a vote to close a school. I just could not believe it because this is a public school district and the public should have a say. Public input should be the start of any proposal, especially for a public school district. Before any decisions are made, it's crucial that the people funding these proposals are informed and they have a transparent explanation of all that these will entail. The public should be informed that these proposals are being looked at. No one ever talked about this. It was SFA, and all of a sudden now we're closing buildings. The public should have been informed that this was being looked at and it was coming, not go behind the scenes and saying, this is it. Like last week when we were here, it was like, here it is. It is the school, 2 weeks ago. It is the school board's responsibility to keep the public informed, not just tell some people, but tell all the people. You are working for the public. We are paying you to work for the public, even if you just voted in. When people ask to be informed, they also want to know if their opinions will be looked at and studied. They want to be involved. They want to have a say in these proposals. You are working with their children. Don't try to soft sell something that probably has already been decided. Be honest and forthright. When you do a hard sell, like last time, and now you had to come back because somebody said we gotta have public input. This is the soft sell. Is this already decided? That's what I'm wondering. There was a lot of questions by a lot of people that I run into, and when I'm out, I run into people. Why did we spend so much money on this SFA if it didn't serve all the people? And they want to know, what is this SFA? What happened to that? Now we're talking about buildings. Aren't we doing curriculum also? And they want to know what McKinley Academy is. They don't know what that is even. And somebody said that there's other options out there and they want to know what those options are. And I told the people that I don't know what those options are. You have to talk to the school board because I have no clue. I'm only a public person now. They want answers, and you are the people that need to give these people the answers. Trust is garnered when the truth is told. If you're not going to be forthright with the people, then you shouldn't be on a school board working for the public. Communication and collaboration is the key to have any advancement. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public input. Okay. No? Nobody? All right, so we will close public input then. Thank you all. And we will move on to the next part of the agenda, which is unfinished business. Certainly, just as we start this, it is always my hope that if we have presentations, we can do the presentations first, then questions from the board, then, of course, motions and discussion. Try and keep afloat what we're going to do. I know the superintendent has a few things to say, but he says it's going to be a fairly brief presentation, so I'll turn it to you, sir.
Thank you, President Abel. First of all, we presented numerous proposals where we were first focusing on a non-referendum borrowing up to 20 million, and we had a number of projects in there, and we demonstrated how there was a return on investment where after a period of time, it really would pay for itself because of the savings that were generated. But through that discussion, the board was saying we prefer to take down some of this cost. And so we worked it down to another option. We just worked it down to really the critical option in terms of the ability to reduce schools to match our enrollment. And so that's what we have in front of you. So all this starts back, we can go back to, first of all, we have declining enrollment. And so we have excessive capacity, and it's costing us approximately $3 million a year plus to maintain a facility, two facilities we don't need, okay? And we've been able to demonstrate that. The facilities audit, because we've been wanting for a long period of time to understand what condition is our facilities in and what do we need to do to maintain them. And through that audit, we were able to identify that we have deferred, meaning that we put it off, and projected critical maintenance needs as well as some enhancements. Without the enhancements, the critical needs are approximately, this is not to create a 21st century school, it is to take care of the maintenance, to keep the doors open, okay, and to make the conditions conducive to learning and safe. That's $100 million. And if you are thinking about that $100 million cost in terms of, funding that would be a referendum, okay? Or some of your operations or a combination. But if you couldn't or didn't pass an operating referendum, it would be approximately $10 million a year to cover that cost. So keeping that in mind, because we just talked about we're spending $3 million a year to maintain two facilities that we really don't need because of our declining enrollment and projected further decline. So what we have is we now reduce this to investing in Stengel, on one of our newer facilities, and Monroe, both because of footprint, both because of the age, and both seen as facilities that are have a longer life with some investment into them than some of the others. Essentially then, by bringing Stengel back in as an elementary consideration, that increases our options of 7. We're currently operating 6, but we could reduce it to 5 easily and still have seat capacity available, even after that, okay? What's important, in this whole process is to, again, recognize the financial savings, but there's also benefits. And Lee and Katie before had presented in terms of all those benefits in terms of going back to where we were at one time when we had larger enrollments of operating 3-section schools. So there's efficiency, there's cost savings, and those cost savings then can be turned back in to cover some of this additional expense. Okay, so this is so big with that amount of money, 161, and it's not to bring them to 21st century, standards. It's to say, geez, this is going to take some period of time to solve. And that's why the 2040 for the last one. We started from elementary, moving into middle, because we recognize we're operating in excessive capacity, and so there can be savings under, first the elementary and potentially at the middle. But that middle is, in the phase 2. Right now it's starting this work. So the proposal is in front of you right now. We've identified that in 10 years, we could offset the cost of borrowing in 6 years. And in 10 years, you would end up with a $14 million surplus, meaning you would not be incurring an expense that you would otherwise have. And those budget savings can be used to enhance your programs or pay for some of this other maintenance costs. So essentially, that's what's in front of you. You have the attachments and reference documents right there in case you want to reference. Lee's available, Katie's available, Angela, Mike, to again answer any questions that you have. But really what we were seeing, this is largely fiscal, and so it was advancing a fiscally responsible, decision, to you. And essentially, yeah, this is a hard decision. But, we need, if we're going to do work next summer and the summer after to complete these projects, to be able to save that start saving that money, we need to get started here by making that decision, because the time's run out almost. And so that's what you have in front of you, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to say a couple of things. One of the things that the superintendent said is that we've looked at numerous proposals. We've looked at one proposal over and over and over again. And the superintendent is selectively hearing us, at least some of us, I guess. I mean, he keeps saying, oh, well, it's a money thing. And I find that to be very characteristic of his way of thinking. He was a business manager for schools. He never taught. He was never a principal. He's never been in Manitowoc, to really get familiar with this community. And so everything comes down to the bottom line, the costs, et cetera. And not that anybody on this board wants to just be cavalier with the costs. But there are other considerations, as Mrs. Hanson said. There are other considerations as other people have talked about. One is, gee, the public owns these places. They should have a say. And I've beat the table on that one for a succession of meetings, and it's still kind of fallen on deaf ears, because now what the superintendent considers public involvement is, he thinks up the plan and then submits it to citizens and parents, et cetera, who come to a listening session. I've had some of his listening session experiences. I don't think that he has a clear concept of what involving the public really involves. And I think we have some ideas. The other thing is that I'm very disturbed by the fact that he doesn't seem to be able to, to deviate from his pattern of doing business. With Success for All, it was a crisis. It was like, it was a crisis that was kept being inflated by rhetoric. Of course we knew that kids weren't reading well. Of course we knew that was the case all over Wisconsin. And then it was like the only solution to that problem was Success for All, the most expensive reading program that there is. And even though we've had some success with that, apparently some success with that, nevertheless, it was way over budget last year. I think, we are committed to it for another 2 years. Again, we don't qualify for assistance from the state on the early reading programs because, boy, the state doesn't recognize it as being valid enough to be on the list. But, gee, it was a crisis. We had to act immediately. We had to like pants on fire, make decisions without really considering other alternatives. And since we've only heard one proposal slightly modified on a number of different occasions, I think we really, really have to say, wow, where really is the emergency here? Why do we have to act now so we can, put money into next summer's projects, which aren't even really planned out or even costed out? I mean, it just seems that, boy, there's a real limitation to what's being presented. And I think there are all kinds of other ideas that should be discussed. And somebody said something about, being creative. I mean, I see no indication of any kind of creative thought whatsoever in this proposal. And to keep hammering, I guess up until just recently with this new proposal, keep hammering on the fact that, boy, we might have to rip down Lincoln High School and replace it with a building that would be, 3/4 plastic and have no heart to it at all. I mean, honestly, that's not the way to treat this community. So I think the superintendent is out of his league on this. I think he's out of touch with this community, and I think he's just persistent with the same stuff over and over and over again, which gets citizens like the former public health nurse up here saying, boy, this has got to be thought out better. It's got to be slowed down more, and it's got to be in keeping with the ethos of this community. So that's me again saying I'm just not voting for this.
Mr. Spalding?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to talk about. First of all, Kerry, I'm tired of your criticism.
Okay.
I'm tired of the fact that you criticize Jim about everything that's done. Now, the first thing I want to say is I know that Jim he has a business-oriented mind, and I know he wants to do what's best for this community. And right now, we're hemorrhaging money, okay? There's a couple things, trust me, I'll get to it, my personal feelings on it too, and it's not what you think. But everybody wants to go to the crisis. Everybody wants to bring up SFA. SFA has been doing fantastic. Hopefully we're going to see fantastic results. We've already been seeing good results. I don't even want to hear anything more about the fact that we spent money on this and now we're talking about closed schools. They are two different subjects. And you're talking about, of course we know they can't read. Carrie, you've been on this board longer than anybody. You've seen more disasters on this board than any one of us. So if I'm looking for anybody for answers as to why we're sitting where we are, it's from people like you. So I don't want to hear another word from it. Second of all, when it comes to the community, I received emails and comments all about wanting to keep the schools open. And it all revolves around, personal memories regarding the certain schools, neighborhoods, feeling comfort being close to the schools with their kids. And I look at the 5 steps to this plan. None of it has anything to do with what the community wants. I know it's not a popular opinion maybe, but according to what I'm seeing, nobody else cares to come to the board meetings and speak up regarding the fact that we're hemorrhaging money. And by prolonging this, we are going to end up paying more down the future. However, the ones that did come and the ones that do email me, I got to go with what they say. So I'm going to vote to hold off and have committees and meetings and talk about and all that other stuff. So that's where I sit.
Thank you. You indicated? Yeah.
I thought Tony was saying.
Well, you indicated and then Tony indicated, and I'm just trying to
Okay.
get you guys in the order I saw you.
Sorry about that. Listening sessions are not public input. Listening sessions are telling people what we're going to do. And that's not what this is. This has to be the community buying into what we're doing. You're going to ask for a lot of money in this process. And right now, there's not support to do what you want to do. It's very simple. It's not there. After a 30%, 30+% tax increase last year, and now you're talking about spending a lot more money and having no public sessions at the schools and the neighborhoods that we're thinking of closing. We sent out a letter. You got to talk to the people. It's their school. I love the comment by the Jackson PTO president, because I was bike riding with a buddy who graduated many years ago, and we were going through his old neighborhood, and he's telling me where everybody lived, and then we went past Jackson, and we were talking, and I said, yeah, it's kind of sad they're thinking of closing this. And he said, why? I said, well, as with much of the state, we're down in number of kids. And he said, where did they send him? I said, probably Stangl. He said his best memories of grade school were getting out of his house, going across the street, picking up his buddy. They picked up about 8 guys and walked to Jackson together every day. It was their school. It wasn't getting on a bus and go halfway across town. But without public input and public sessions and getting opinion, Manitowoc is going to be what happened in Sheboygan. Sheboygan had a plan. It got completely turned around because the public stepped forward and said no. They're rebuilding their middle school on the land that it's on. That was not the case that they wanted to do. They wanted a new middle school down there. But the public said no, and now they're going to rebuild urban right next to North High. It's happened in other communities around here where the school board said, we're going to do this, no input, and it changed because people said we're not supporting it. So all we're going to do is hit a dead end down the road. No matter how much we talk about and think everything's great. My concerns are, after the document we got today from the superintendent about the finances, there is not agreement here on $14 million over the years or $1 million a year. We have different opinions within this office building on the money situation. Who am I going to believe? Who do I say is the right voice? I don't know. I don't do money. But I also know there's 2 people that are completely on polar opposite sides on that. And I'm going to say, let's borrow $11 million, and I don't really know who's right. That makes no sense to me, and I'm sure it makes no sense to the people who vote. We need to sit down and perhaps form a committee of public people to come up with answers to the questions. I want to know what it's going to cost. Let's look at other ideas. We own land, I think we still own land on Fleetwood Drive. It's a growing part of the city. Why aren't we looking at a school there rather than on the far north side of town where everybody would have to be bused? Instead of building a new middle school, maybe we build a new grade school there. What about getting rid of this place? Do we need an office building if we have so much room in all our other buildings? Could we move administrative staff to a closed grade school? Or put administrative staff somewhere else? It might be good for some of our administrative staff to be in school buildings. We have to look at options rather than, boom, this is what we're doing, Manitowoc, this is my plan. We're closing, it's really closing 2 schools. We're just reopening another school and making it a grade school and sending the high school kids somewhere else. But that's not clear yet. And you want $11 million, and I don't even know where that's going. Some of the decisions that we've made over the last couple of months, I was thinking, we're doing new lights over at Jefferson. That's the newest school. That's one of our best schools. We're putting new lights in there. Why aren't we doing that maybe at Lincoln High School that needs the work? It's going to be here for another 40 years. Maybe new lights there would help. We're fixing the newest schools. That's a sign to the city. That's a sign to the community. We're fixing up this school. We're fixing up this school, spending no money anywhere else. So those are the 2 schools we're going to use, maybe 3 schools. Gentlemen, it is time to pump the brakes, as I've been told by two very knowledgeable public property leaders in the near area here, to say, hey, you got to pump the brakes. You got to figure out what you're doing there before you start borrowing money and spending money. But I will not support anything until I find out which side of this financial situation is right. Because we don't know. We have no idea. All I know is we've spent a lot of money, and I'm sorry, Matt, on a reading program, we spent a lot of money, more money than most districts spend. We increased taxes on our people last year, and I hope there's results coming up. I really hope there's positive results, but I don't see it. If I had my way, I would table this right now and say, we need to form a committee of community people. We need to go to the different schools that you're thinking of closing and get input and talk to people and look at other options. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, again, this is really an economic decision, right? And, you know, you guys are talking a lot about being responsible with money, and I'm all on board with that. And I think if we're gonna have that conversation, we have to realize the cost of inaction, right? And I'm not sure if everyone here is considering that into their thinking. But right now, the cost of kicking this can down the road a year is about $1 million, right? Because that's ultimately the savings that we're gonna get. So I don't know how long this process with committees is gonna take, but, you know, the way I look at it is I just pretend it's my money, right? If I was pissing away $1 million a year, I wouldn't just sit there and allow that to continue. I would try to put that to an end as soon as possible, especially when you factor in our current financial situation where we're already a little bit strapped with our budget. And to me, I just don't think we have this room to be that foolish, right? If we're over capacity by 20%, we need to be moving quickly, because every month we're not doing this, it's like $83,000 taxpayers are missing out on, right? That could be reallocated to other areas. So if you do the math, it's pretty compelling. And for that reason, you know, I think that we can figure out a way to move forward and not necessarily have all components of the plan determined, but determine that, hey, we have to, you know, some schools are going to close. That's going to happen. So I think we need to be honest about that and not, as I said before, rip the Band-Aid off. Don't just sit there and make it more painful than it needs to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The reference that Carrie made to one program fits all, I totally agree with. And no relationship to SFA, but that was the only program that was looked at. That's not what the board had promised. Many issues. That's the only program that was looked at. CISA 10 is the only program that we have looked at. My issue with this whole proposal is that we have never gone outside of our own barriers to ask other districts who they've contracted with, what they have done, what was successful in their district, what was not successful, why was this successful. Every district in public education is having a decrease of enrollment. It's a given. Mr. Tennis's numbers to us, in the next 5 years, we will lose 287 kids. That's a projection. Well, 287 kids in 5 years, to me, is not a crisis. It's something to look at, but it certainly isn't a crisis that we need to close schools now. We have not looked at districts like Appleton, who went through a massive remodeling. We have not looked at Chilton, who went through a massive remodeling. We have not looked at De Pere, who has done a massive remodeling. We didn't look at any of those schools and ask who they employed, who they worked with, what did they do, what was successful, what was not successful. We did not do that. We didn't do it with SFA, and I'm not drawing a relationship, but I do not support doing it again with only one company. If I were really articulate, I would have worked with the president to have a motion tonight that CISA 10 did a wonderful job. It cost $65,000. They gave us a great proposal. CISA 10 is now getting 4 quarterly payments to pay off an $84,000 lighting contract. That's what I found out are 4 quarterly payments. CISA 10 bills us every month, this month with $22,000. Okay, so you're talking about wasting money. We have one program that is costing money right now as we sit here, and we have no other options to look at. So I think that, Tony, is a lot of wasted money. And we're not done yet, because we still have $1.2 million worth of things contracted through CISA 10 that have yet to be accomplished on our Appendix A that we just found out about in June, Appendix A. So there are some similarities to what has happened. We have not explored other alternatives. And like I said, next month, I will come to the board, if this does not go through tonight, with a motion that we start looking at least 2 other companies that can give us ideas on how to make this thing work for us as a community. Give us options. What did they do? What has Appleton did? What did Green Bay do? What has De Pere do? All facing similar issues. So let's learn from them. We're not just ramming this down anybody's throat. As far as that tax cost, I read through everything today. Tony, you said we're going to lose money. But I remember Mike Baird from Baird Company saying, if you borrow the money and your estimated payments, let's take the 11.5, and I have a document here, $11.5 million borrowing in 10 years. The estimated payment is $1.4 million back. Well, if we run into financial crisis, if we run into any financial difficulty, we still owe that bank or that lending institution $1.4 million. And he said, yes, you will owe them the $1.4 million. So what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to break and cut services to pay that bill. Now, having been at Washington last year for an interim and having been in this district, we have cut foreign languages to beyond recognition of what this district had. Our theater arts program is non-existent in the middle school. So what's going to happen to our theater? Our vocal and our instrumental music programs have been decimated at the middle school. So what's going to happen? If we borrow money and we have to pay $1.4 million back every year, and that's on the $15 million, because we can't meet our financial commitment, we're going to pay it off by cutting programs. I would never, ever, ever support decimating our programs anymore. Angela, I have a question for you. And this is probably going to make no sense, but help me make it understood. There seems to be some confusion on the tax impact between information that we've gotten. Is it possible that the debt payment for the level of borrowing that we have submitted actually could be more than the projected savings?
Yes, it depends upon the term and how much we borrow.
Okay, say that one more time.
So yes, it would, it depends, but it depends largely on the amount that we borrow and the duration of the payment. So $1 million of savings, $1 million annually, if we replace it with $1 million debt payment, we would have to borrow closer to a 20-year term, $11.5 million.
And if we don't pay that back, then we're cutting programs.
Correct, yes.
We are not even at a stable budget right now. Our budget's still very fluid, right? We have 20 positions to get, up to 20 positions, as I read the report.
Mm-hmm.
And I read the voucher statements. We still have hundreds of thousands of dollars in vouchers to pay. Who's going to lend us money? How much money do we have in vouchers left?
Well, vouchers are determined annually, but they're going to raise this year through this next budget at least 200,000 to 800,000 plus. We don't know. We don't get that information until October 15th. So if you look just singularly at the debt payment and your expense savings, that's one thing in your budget, but you have a lot of other things that fill into the full picture, like vouchers, and that includes that. So, but from the if you have exactly your offset, and Jim and I did talk about this because he thought I did not understand, but I understood clearly. But the amount that was being talked about before was that we were gonna be borrowing $20 million, which I knew was larger than $1 million payment offset. So I knew that there was just a little bit of disconnect between us on that. So we clarified that, and so that's why I want to make sure that you guys understand, because you know.
So the money we still owe CISA, CISA 10,
Yes.
quarterly payments for that $84,000, okay, for the lighting program. Our monthly statements of, or bills from CISA, because every time we call them or talk to them or they come here as a bill, this month was 22,000 by what I understand. So now, if we take this information and we still owe SFA another $320,000 for the next year's training, because that's part of that contract. That's part of this voucher stuff that you're saying we have not been paid for.
It's part of the full budget picture, you know, that the board has yet to approve the budget, and that's, you know, all that information has to be.
We really
We
can't
haven't had
even,
a chance to really look at the budget yet.
because we still have all these positions open.
Excuse me?
We still have all these positions open. We can,
Yeah, your budget always does remain fluid until the, you know, beginning of the year, and then sometimes you're hiring after that, and then, you know, just with the way Wisconsin school finance works, and, you know, we just have our aid estimate now, we don't finalize budget until the end of October, so, yes,
okay.
we have all the pieces.
Good?
Yeah.
I just want to check with Matt. Mr.
Sure.
Biggs, did you want to get anything in?
Yeah, I can talk. I don't want to go on a soapbox, but I'll talk a little bit. I just want to say thank you to everybody that has put all this information together. It was obviously a collaborative effort, and I'm very, very happy to see all the information put in front of me. It's been very enjoyable reading through it and understanding the nuts and bolts of it. I think bottom line, it's been spoken quite clearly. Enrollment's been going down over the years, and we have the same facilities. And obviously, it's kind of common sense that, you know, we have too much space for what we need. And that's running into the human factor or the emotional side of, hey, this could be our school at the chopping block, so let's support and fight that, which I think that's awesome, and that's what we should be doing. However, the CISA 10 report about our state of affairs, that's not something we can just change or defer. We can continue to defer, but, you know, that cost of the improvements of the facilities, that's gonna be needed to be done no matter what. I mean, we can try to continue to push it off. My biggest thing before we kind of got into this conversation was, what if we do kick the can? What if we do kick the can? Let's keep on kicking the can. Let's see what's gonna happen. And I think that's been explicitly talked about today, about what is gonna happen if we do nothing. And I think that's what I want to take out of this meeting tonight, that it's quite clear to the taxpayers of the community, if we do nothing, that we're going to be costing everybody another $1 million a year or more in more deferred maintenance. And we understand that there is a enrollment dropping, and we're going to do nothing except try to work on it together to try to facilitate a better plan, come back to the community. However, it's going to cost you guys more and more every day we wait, which I just want to make sure everybody, and then that's as long as the information and being transparent is there, I think that's really what we're trying to achieve. When I was first on the board, I always asked these questions, we didn't have any answers. So this presentation in the last few months has been just amazing to see the information presented, the input from the CISA 10, the executive, Mr. Weil, and then his team as well. So I think the information's quite clear now, to me at least. And then one thing I want to highlight as well about the interest rate on the borrowings, 4.25%. That's amazing because we're obviously a school compared to the private sector. So I think that's amazing. If we would do something, it would. And then the cost savings in the long run, that makes complete sense to me with what Tony was trying to say. But if we don't move forward and it gets voted down or nobody makes a motion to go forward, it's just clear that everybody, you know, we're not making adjustments and we're acting on emotion, not factual information. So thank you though for everybody that's given information and the comments, but I have nothing more to say. I think it would only be in the best interest to move forward as a district to understand that we need to consolidate in some form or manner in the future. So that's where I'm at.
Thank
Yeah, just clarification on the borrowing of the 11.7 million. You have a table in there, and you can see the payment in terms of the amount is 1.438. Obviously, this is doing it because we recognize we've reduced capacity and then you save at least $1 million in operating expense. Doesn't happen right away. So if you look at the net budget impact, you can see what that payment is that you still are responsible for, but you've got savings offsetting it. The other thing that became clear to us is that we've never put enough money aside. This would be in addition to an occasional facilities referendum that you might have to support your facilities, which a lot of school districts have. This would just be how to maintain your buildings and keep them up. They recommend for our size approximately $6 million. So we are recognizing we never put enough money aside. And so we started that with 1.5 million, not yet designated. We recognize, you got $100 million. I mean, there's many things to choose from. 161 if you start thinking about enhancements. So what I'm saying is that 1.5 million that we put away, that we've identified that should be you, would pay for this. And all these other savings are not doing maintenance for any schools that you decommission, just starts supporting your programming that we all want and we want more of. But you're not going to have more of it if you keep spending money you don't have to spend. That's just it. Just wanted to make sure that you understood that.
Again, all of these things are coming from a CISA 10 proposal. We have heard from nobody else, okay? But I'm going to read a direct quote from Mike Baird, from Mike Clark from Baird. If there are equal expenditure reductions to offset the debt payment, there is no tax impact. Equal. If the district would need to increase its use of operational referendum dollars to cover all or portion of the debts, you would affect your programming. You're going to pay that debt, and if we have to exceed that, we take it out of our operational, our program's money.
Just clarification, I also talked with Mike and I just got off the phone with him. When I just informed you that this would pay for itself with what we put aside, pays for itself. So there would not be a tax increase.
If we're level. If we are not level, we still pay that, but we take it out of our programming.
I mean, the math seems pretty, I think it made my point.
So if I may, are you done?
Yeah.
If I heard you right, Jim, we have $1.5 million in the budget today that's earmarked for facilities.
That we just added for this year and
that's currently in the budget. You guys agree
We
on
are
that?
working that into the budget. We had, that may change now, but we had talked about, we need to address the problems at Lincoln. There's water leaking in there. We have architectural costs. We had talked about preliminarily.
Okay, thank you.
We're
So
shaping
that's
it.
good. So why wouldn't we leverage that $1.5 million in our budget to do 10 or $20 million worth of stuff that needs to happen? I'm just asking the question. Right? Our buildings are falling apart. I think we all agree on that. Like, we really need, according to Jim, $10 million a year budgeted to keep up with our maintenance for critical stuff over the next 10 years. If you guys want to cut that in half, that's $5 million a year.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that money's in our budget and we can leverage that for the next, the debt agency about $1 million.
Oh, sorry, Tony.
I'm just saying, let's talk about this, right?
I've never disagreed with that. I've never
Okay,
disagreed.
So why don't we,
I've been laying the most of my emphasis on involving the people who pay the bills, or at least a lot of the bills. This is just, I mean, I understand how you think. You are a businessman and you have to, you have to look at the money all the time. And the superintendent is the same way. But as you keep hearing from people that get up and speak, is there are other considerations that are really of high priority to the people of this community. And I think we have to do some kind of reconciliation on that. And it seems to me that we keep just talking about the money. And, you know, and I've never disagreed with that. I've never disagreed with that. It'd be nice to have another $1 million a year. It's how you do it rather than just doing it. And right now, we get the option of just doing it, or, you know,
You can add a 0 to that number.
well, yeah.
You're just
okay.
adding more money.
I know. But I do think it's important that we do a little bit more complicated process than the one that we have had presented to us.
Mr. Hanson.
My comment to that, Tony, is where are we spending the money? What are we gonna fix? We've already decided, according to the plans that we've seen, that we're fixing Stangl and returning it to a grade school. Community had no input on that. The school was made a high school because there were so many kids bused there. So my question is, if there is support to spend money, I'll borrow it because we need it. Things need to get done. But we're being driven by this plan to fix that grade school, and there's been no input on the other ones. You know, Jackson is a neighborhood school. Madison is a neighborhood school. Why are we looking at busing kids across the city when maybe we don't need to do that?
Economics, that's why.
Maybe.
School
Millions
is
of
more
dollars, dude.
than economics.
Well, that's part of it, all right? That's part of it.
School are families and kids, not just getting on a bus and going and learning
But if the
somewhere.
difference is millions of dollars a year, then at some point you gotta determine what makes sense.
I agree with that. That's your sense, okay? I grew up in a community that spent extra money to make a field house. A blue collar community spent extra money to build a field house rather than a gym. They spent extra money to build a special high school rather than just a high school. That's the community I grew up in. Will it cost a little bit more to have a neighborhood school rather than bus kids across town? I want to see the numbers on that and know how much it is. Okay, I haven't seen those numbers. What's the cost? Is it going to cost us more to do that? I don't know. I know the values of the community and where it's been. And the only way we're going to find out how strong that is to have public input sessions that let people talk rather than listening sessions that tell them what we're doing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we have options presented? I mean, we paid these guys from CISA to put together that study. And then they came back with a couple of these options. I presume they worked with Lee and your team, correct?
They worked with our whole group of
Right.
folks.
Okay, so like, I mean, you guys keep saying we've had no options, but there's at least 4 of them. I see 1, B, C, and D.
Did we consider those, or were they just on the paper? Because every time we've discussed, it's been Jefferson and Stangl need the money, and boom, that's where we're going, and we're gonna put kids there. Otherwise, why are we shoving money into a grade school we closed because it wasn't in a neighborhood?
Well, I think part of it was because those buildings are newer and it made more economic sense. There's less risk that we might like move up. So part of it's like, hey, instead of doing a bunch of projects all over the place, like let's assess what's the most likely to stay in the portfolio over the next.
Did we have that discussion? Was a public brought in on that discussion? Or we're just driving this, we're just deciding what we're gonna do?
Well, I think at some point, you know, we have to work with the information that we have.
I would agree with you, Tony. At some point, we have to do that, but we don't have the information because they haven't had input. We haven't heard from people who live around those schools. That's part of the information we need, not just, this is an economic way to do it. Education is kids and families.
We've heard from people, and I've heard from people too. Maybe they don't show up to meetings, but once people understand, hey, it's gonna cost $1 million a year to not do anything, right? And we're 20% over capacity, right? Most people aren't gonna argue that we need to do something. And really all I'm hearing here is that let's drag this out. Who knows how long this process is gonna take.
And for every person you've heard, yes, what you've heard, that's not what I'm hearing. People are saying, don't close my school. Why are you doing that? Why do you have a fancy office building? Why can't those people work in empty rooms at Jackson or empty rooms at Madison? Why can't we do it that way? We all have FaceTime. We can have meetings over the phone now. Why do we have an extra building just for administrative team? Do we need this expense, or could we close this and save money and maybe make some money selling this place? Everybody got all excited, oh, close Madison, and then we can sell that land and make some money. That's a city park. That's parkland down there. So very little of that land is school district property. There's more to this than economics. There's people and kids.
I want to get Mr. Spalding in and then Mr. Shaw.
I know what needs to be done. I know it eventually down the line, we're gonna do this. This is gonna happen. But like, I guess what Biff said, in contrast to what Tony is saying, I'm not receiving any of that. I haven't heard one person say anything about, hey, we need to do something, we need to do it now. I've gotten emails from people on the county board of supervisors, not Biff, whatever, but people telling me, hey, slow down. We dealt with this with the dome and it took some time to just sit back and let the public absorb it and become part of that discussion. I know that it's costing us money, but they obviously don't care. The ones that may care, they could have came here and spoke tonight, or they could have sent me an email. Nobody did. The ones that cared about the community and the schools, which we know have to close eventually, I know they do. But obviously they're not seeing everything that I'm seeing. I'm not seeing everything that everybody else is seeing. There's other options. You talked about closing this building, and as crazy as that sounds, well, why wouldn't we? I don't know. But the thing is that there are options out there. I know that rushing to this is probably the best decision monetarily. But according to the community, that's not what they want. So as what Matt says, as long as this information is transparent and we can keep it going with them, if that's what it's I'm here to represent them. So that's why I'm going against my own decision, but I will be voting no.
And I will again reiterate that next month, I think we owe it to the community and to the taxpayers to get more than one CISA 10 bid. We need to have many companies put forth. We've asked CISA 10 to do this, to take a look at our facilities, to see what we need to do, to give us proposals. There are many companies in Northeast Wisconsin and our own CISA that provide the same service. We need their bid. We need their input. We need a comparison between these costs and another company's costs. This is not an automatic, in my opinion, to grant CISA 10 without hearing from other communities, other organizations, other industries, what they have done to make their program successful. We're not alone in this whole bit. We're not alone in this. Many communities have gone through this. Who did they use? Was it successful? Why was it successful? What did they have done? Is it our scope? Get their businesses in here or their industries in here to give us the same thing that CISA 10 gave us. I'm not saying that it's a bad proposal, but is there another proposal equal to that with less expense, with better ideas, more ideas, unique ideas? We don't know that. I can't adopt one proposal. I can't do that.
I would make a motion to close our central office building and relocate to one of the elementaries.
Does
anybody have?
I'll second it. 2 empty rooms in elementary or middle schools or the high school.
I would accept that friendly amendment. See, we can have fun.
So
That's a serious motion. That's my motion on the table. It was seconded with a friendly amendment.
understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Discussion.
The motion is to decentralize central
Well, I
office.
said relocate central office to an elementary school, empty classrooms.
Close it. Say that again?
Take the motion to move central office from the Lindbergh Drive to an elementary school that's available to alleviate expenditures for the district, under the notion that we are gonna use unused space.
And you second.
I think I'm seconding that, yes.
Thank you. I'm just making sure that his motion and your second matched, because they didn't for a second, and I was concerned.
Give me the negatives from the people.
The reasoning behind that is obviously we are on a fiscal cliff that we have already gone over, just we don't quite understand it yet. This is only gonna get worse. I think it would strengthen the bond between central office and the teachers and the students and the faculty.
community.
In the community, and it would be the first step in moving in the right direction of understanding that we have something that is unsustainable and we need to move forward and trying to prevent this from happening again.
I would ask a question to Carrie and Keith, because you've been around for a while. When this place was bought, was it because the old central office, which was the McKinley building, went back to being a school?
No,
What,
the old building that we had as central offices, was not adequate. We had early learning centers upstairs, early childhood was upstairs. We had bats in the belfry way upstairs. The bats were flying all over the place. It was not conducive for elementary children to be up there, and it was not conducive for an educational environment, let alone sequential, organized instruction, with all the departments meeting and having some collaborative space. The need was that McKinley was outdated and needed a great deal of expense for the purposes of a central office.
but it was a central office at that time.
It was the central office, absolutely.
And then it turned into a high school.
Because the central office before was time was in Jefferson Elementary. When they remodeled Jefferson Elementary, they moved to the central office. In the old Jefferson Elementary, there was a building in front, and that's where the central office was. That's where all of the meetings were and all that kind of stuff. Then when Jefferson Schools remodeled, then they went over to McKinley and remodeled McKinley at that point. United Central Office is not being spread out all over an entire district with offices all over the place. Central office administrators need a place to work together, to walk down the hall, to have conversations, to see what's going on, have a united front, and have meetings, not to be transported all over the district and guess who's in their office at the one time. So, Biff, I'm sorry. I think that suggestion is ridiculous, but I will not vote for the motion.
Hang on, I'll call it myself.
Okay, call it.
Okay, because I have a question for Mr. Fitz.
Sure.
I don't believe, except for one location, that we can fit all of central office. So would it trouble you if they were put across several grade schools?
I think it would be a prerogative to the district administrator to make a solution that fits that motion, and then if it got passed, so it'd be up to him then to give us a presentation that was viable to support the motion, and then if it was voted on, if it was passed or not. So it's just a directive going to the superintendent's office.
Okay.
I'm gonna vote against the motion because I just think it's not even rational to like do this piecemeal. You know, to change one thing without changing, without dealing with the whole issue, the whole problem. It seems kind of,
Well, I brought it up 2 years ago and it was kind of thought on deaf ears. So that's why it's been the public has said, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
The public was always saying, why are you guys at central office? Why do you? So that was always been in my ear of saying, hey, we need to get back to the relationship.
I think it's something that could be considered,
Yep.
yeah, but I think it has to be considered with a holistic plan.
Yep, and I think that's what this whole facility audit did, and then the presentation about moving forward. And I think ultimately it's about being fiscally responsible and transparent to the communities.
It's physically responsible, it isn't holistic though.
Well, bringing them back to the community, I think it is.
I think, like, I don't think it's a bad idea. I know it's not gonna be a favorite idea, especially amongst the administrators, but here we wanna make changes, okay? And the community is telling us to pump the brakes, but we wanna make changes. We wanna start saving some money. What a better way to show them that we're all in on this. We're willing to listen to them, but we're also willing to make changes and do what we need to do to accomplish our goals than by voting to do this, because this is something that we can save money on doing. And it's gonna show them that we're going for it. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad idea. So, I mean, Carrie, you wanna make changes, but then you don't wanna make changes.
Oh,
or-
yeah, well,
Yeah, you know, you do and you don't, but let's hold
mean,
on,
everything
but
I
let's make
say,
changes.
you-
I don't know. So that's just my own opinion. It's not a bad idea. I did remember him talking about it years ago, but yeah, that was never gonna happen back then. Now this is a way for us to say, hey, you know what? I know what it's like closing down something that meant something to us. You know what I mean? And maybe it's something, this is serious. I think it's a good idea.
Do you have anything you want to say?
I guess I'm curious, do we have any idea how much money that would even save us? I mean, I'm kind of intrigued by the idea. I won't
$10.
lie to you, but
So,
just without a-
like I said, if it passes, then it's on the directive of the superintendent's office to give us cost analysis, and you can always change it.
Details,
Yeah,
office setup.
obviously, a solution isn't presented till it's asked to be presented.
Short.
Yes. I seconded this because I wanted this discussion to happen. And this is what concerns me with the discussion of much of what we've done over the last couple of months with the building projects. We have these meetings just among ourselves, and we have these little tiny meetings, and they last a while. And then we say, yeah, we're gonna do that. Okay? This may be a good idea or not. Somebody can do a study on it. But it's the process of why we have to say we're having a study and somebody with knowledge is gonna look. Otherwise, we could vote to do this tonight at this board and maybe not have information we need.
What information you want to know about closing this building? This seems like something that's.
I guess what I'd like to do is find out from staff that works here, how important is it to be in the same building? Okay? Is it possible to take certain departments and move it somewhere else? But do the study rather than just say, yeah, let's do it.
Kick that can as well. Both down the way.
Sometimes you gotta get knowledge. You have to have the knowledge. It sounds like a great idea, but you need the knowledge.
I call the question.
Okay,
A second question.
second, okay. Well, I just want to, I know I'm violating calling the question. I just want to say real quick, I've always been a fan of decentralizing central offices, and not just because it sounds funny, but because I honestly believe a lot of the stuff that's in here, if we had central office people seeing that stuff every day, never would have got to the point that it did. And I think it's good to be out there in the buildings that we're using every day. I think we have the technology to make this work. Everybody's got those little phones with the cameras on them. Everybody's got computers. There's lots of ways for people to have meetings when the other person isn't just out home. Okay, so the motion is to move central office into school or schools. What exactly that would look like would be forthcoming, depending upon the outcome of the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Unopposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, I'm in doubt. Can I see the nays, please? It passes 4-3. And you all thought nothing was gonna happen. Well, there you go. The news people are so glad they showed up for something nobody could have seen coming.
Yeah.
I'll make another motion.
You're on a roll.
Yep.
Don't let me stop you.
So I would make a motion to go ahead with phase one of the facility recommendations from the superintendent's office.
So we have a motion to move on phase one recommendation from the superintendent. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Want to speak to it?
We talked about it quite a bit. I just wanted to highlight that, obviously this is gonna continue to cost more money, but I wanna make sure that our votes are noted instead of just tabling it and not having a vote. So I'm doing this to let my vote be heard, so that I can sleep better at night.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to it too? You were the second. I was like to defer.
Yeah, I just
you
think
guys.
that we should explore all avenues to reduce our operating expenses, and I think the plan is sensible and pays for itself, so I would do it all day.
And before Mr. Shaw calls the question, I would just say that I do not believe that failure to pass this today means we don't have ways to be saving up to $1 million starting next year. With this plan, it starts next year. Without this plan, there are ways to get there by next year because there's a whole 13 months ahead of us until next school year. So I think we can get there either way.
You know, just, you know, with this, and I really appreciate, I really appreciate.
Go ahead, finish.
I really appreciate the exchange, so I feel like you're making an informed decision. You know, I highlight, you know, in terms of the closing two facilities and the 20 million associated with that. You know, if that were even to reapply to other maintenance needs, but programming needs, you could reinstate a lot. So, you know, I just offer that too, in terms of when you're talking about program cuts, because this is money that's staying away from. The other thing is, you know, I'm new to the community, I am part of the community. This is my community too, but I did receive somebody, and you might recognize this. It says, Superintendent File, I read your, what you wrote for the Herald Times report, and I was pleased with your forthright commentary. I am a 1980 graduate of Manitowoc Lincoln High School and a 1984 graduate of University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I had 3 siblings graduating in from Lincoln in 1966, 1971, and 1975. My father graduated in 1933, my mom in 1941, and my stepfather in 1948. We all supported the Manitowoc Public Schools in every manner. My oldest brother is a retired teacher, and I have friends who are or were teachers. My wife is a 1983 graduate of East Troy High School and is a graduate of University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in nursing. I have 4 children, all who graduated from Menominee Falls High School in 2013, 15, 17, and 20. All have progressed through UW-Madison or UW-Milwaukee, with my youngest attending her last year in Madison. We went through building issues in the mid-2010s here in Menominee Falls, and we barely passed a referendum for over $50 million to improve the buildings. It was not easy in a very conservative city to get this passed. You must convince the people of Manitowoc to look forward like their families did for them. Manitowoc struggled mightily as an economy in the 70s and 80s. It is much more conservative than the city I grew up. It has turned the corner. Closing one elementary school is a no-brainer. The people who live in that neighborhood will be affected, but in the long term, it will be the right for the community. Good luck. We are supporting you. We will be in Manitowoc this winter when they honor the 1980 Ships basketball team for their trip to state, which I was a very small part of, sent by John Gerald Feldman.
You had something else you were going to say?
Sorry. Oh, no, I wanted to say thank you to what you said, Mr. Chairman, about how we should look, you know, this isn't a failure if it doesn't pass. Because I think if nothing else, we've opened up the eyes to the system of understanding that, hey, this is unsustainable. We need to make choices. If it's not consolidation, then it's a budget reduction plan. I'm tempted to make another motion after this, but maybe I'll let you do that. But yeah, obviously this is just information. I think that's been great. And I think we have to wrestle around with it, but understanding that we have to do something, it is very, very clear.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to clear something up. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought we were kind of getting right up on that edge of we needed to take action today. Otherwise, we kind of missed that window to implement this plan.
It is for doing any major work next summer, you know, in terms of what we were projecting. We would have to get that started.
So that means the question been called on the motion, not this discussion. It's been on the motion for this, the question.
Oh, I didn't hear you call that. I just said I wanted to say something before you called it as a joke. I didn't realize you were calling it at that time, so I apologize. Honestly.
Okay.
Okay. Finish your thought, man.
Yeah, so my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but if we don't take action on this tonight, that it's kind of a missed opportunity, right? As far as realistically getting,
To do what was proposed starting next summer, and it takes 2 summers to restore.
yeah. So that would in effect be $1 million.
Yeah, we're identifying
Okay,
that
so-
there was offset in savings from, decommissioning those schools because of what we were doing to prepare for that.
You wanted to call the question, so I want to recognize you. to do that.
We have no other ideas. We have no other plans. This is one proposal, one statement, one idea, and nobody else has even submitted any plan to this district. I don't know why you think it's so good not to have other opinions and positions regarding this magnitude of project. What is wrong with seeking other information, other proposals, other industrial sites, other communities that have done this? What is wrong with that? This is one proposal.
There's nothing wrong.
I can't believe that you say to any of your customers, Matt,
Now, if
you're the only one.
Just mentioned me, so obviously, so if you were at the meetings with Nexus about a year and a half ago, they just want to go to referendum for building new schools and then collect the money.
So
So
find that out.
being conservative, because I am born and raised here, went to middle school, elementary, and high school, I do understand that we don't want to spend a bunch of money that we can't justify. So Nexus wanted to go straight to referendum, get prepared for that. This is the conservative route of hiring audit of seeing where the facilities were at, so we understood a state of affairs where we were. So that's where we got to where we are. Now, having more information in general, when you say that, is great. However, this is the more information. Each school has been measured and found that it is delinquent. And we have many people, parents and staff members saying, hey, these are crappy schools. Let's do something about it. So the notion that the input of the public hasn't been loudly heard for over a decade, that we need to do something with our schools. Well, obviously, then we come to the enrollment. The enrollment has been going down. So I'm kind of just done hearing that crap. So I'm not gonna make a grandstand any more than I did. But the truth is, we have to consolidate. And if it's not under this board or that board, it's gonna happen. And it's gonna cost the taxpayers more. But that's why I want to vote on it, so that I make sure that I said what I was gonna do when I got elected, and I'm gonna do it until I'm done.
Yes.
And Keith, I'd just like to respond that, I mean, really the alternative, if I'm hearing you right, is to gamble that we might miss out on $1 million and we might end up with a plan that's not as good as the one we have. So we can dissect for like months and months and years.
Tony, you can't be guaranteed it's $1 million savings if we have to cut programs.
We might not, who's talking about cutting programs? No one's talking about.
That bill, you're gonna cut
I'm
programs.
talking about making this district freaking phenomenal, right? Scores are up. So as long as we focus on what we control, this is all within our ability to execute. And I'm willing to bet on this team. So, maybe that feeling's not the same across the room, but I feel that I've seen enough out of our staff the last year to know that they can execute. We just got to give them the opportunity. And I don't want to miss out on $1 million in savings. I'd rather have that $1 million go elsewhere and get more done, because we have to solve this facilities problem. Like, I don't want to be here if a roof caves in over one of our buildings. And they're gonna be like, how did that happen? I'll be like, oh, well, we wanted to explore more options. We thought it'd be a good idea to take another year and talk to 8 other school districts. No, thank you.
Okay, not seeing anybody calling to speak, then we're going to go to the vote here, to the motion, which is to adopt superintendent's phase 1 facility recommendation. All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
and opposed say nay.
Nay.
So that goes 2 to 5, so that motion fails. Any other motions forthcoming on this?
I'd like to make a motion that we set up some meetings at Jackson and Madison involving the community, having them come in and speak, and getting this whole essence of not involving the community out of this small. Seriously, we need to make some community meetings. I don't care if it's you, Chris, or Biff, or anybody, but we need to schedule some meetings, call the neighboring community, their children, I don't care what it is, we'll fill the gyms, whatever, and we'll talk and not only hear what they don't want, I know they don't, we know they don't want to close a school. Come with some solutions. Come with some solutions, and we're here to listen.
We have a motion there. I'll second it for you. Any other discussion on that motion?
Is it of value? When we were discussing the courthouse, we had a committee that looked at that process. The executive wanted to do one thing. As the process went forward, the committee studied the dome and the windows and the HVAC and everything else, and decided to do it differently than the original. And these were experts within the community, builders and people who worked in the building and others. And they looked at it from that professional standpoint of the building and what the needs are. And the process changed the original plan. Is there value in doing something like that here?
I could see the value in that, but the thing is, I would want that committee to be none of us. And then, but then when you do that, now are we picking community members that are neighborhood family members of Jackson and Madison? Because they're obviously going to be biased. Or are we picking community members that are Lincoln? I mean, how would we do that to make sure that it's completely an unbiased evaluation?
Superintendent File?
Yeah, and just regarding this, as I see it, based on our action, which is now, we've got a course of action, meaning that plan's off the table. So what we have is the audit, okay? Because it was so big, it was difficult when we were first looking at this in terms of, I suggested break this down, spread it over time, because there's not an easy solution to this. And that's where we came up with 3 phases where we could start immediately to try to save money. So one of the things is, okay, let's educate the community. Here's the audit, and start helping them understand, but it's all the schools.
Bring the audits to the meetings.
So, I mean, it'll be very informative. It will extend time. We've already made that decision. So the next best thing is help the community understand. You've got $161 million proposed. That's not to make the 21st century. That's just to keep the doors open with some minimal enhancements. That's just an audit. That was going through, meeting with staff, meeting with, the people when they went through there. You got Washington with a gym sink, you can't even close the door. I mean, you've got some real issues. I think the only urgency I would say now is what Tony had mentioned of a potentially safety issue, that you now have a problem because of delays. Yeah. With, is this more critical than this? Is this because we're going to do a piecemeal response? So I think we need to get to a big solution here, meaning how are we going to divide this up? I mean, I appreciate getting the community involved. We can spend as much time as you want to do on it. They're just risks, that's all. There's risk associated with the condition of your facilities because they're really bad.
Yeah, I guess.
I'd be curious for all the folks advocating for more of that. What does that look like and what's that timeline look like?
Right, so come in with solutions, right?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing to keep in mind is that, there's people in this community that may not be as engaged, but they still care. I don't go to every county board meeting, but I expect my county board rep to kind of do stuff, right? So I think it's, obviously there's some element of people that show up are there and you hear them, but that's not the entire community, right? So I think we have to realize that it's not whoever yells the loudest is going to be the direction we go. I think we have to look at what makes the most sense for the entire community.
I just want to say that this is a political process. You can't do a political process unless you run for support. I mean, you keep saying, and that's all about money too, because sooner or later we're going to need a referendum. And if we piss people off at this point because we haven't asked them what they think, they're going to vote no. So have a little bit of long-term view in this instead of like pushing the crisis. I think that we really do need to build stronger support and trust with the staff, I mean, we went through that and everybody just said, oh, well, let them move. So I think we need to build support with the staff and with the public in a way that we're all kind of, in agreement. And I think in the long run, people are going to say, well, I hate to see the school go, but gee, I don't want to have my taxes go up 60%. Maybe you should close down a couple of those schools. But they haven't been asked yet, you see, and we need to do a campaign. We need to do the political part of our function of being. I mean, we are political representatives of the community. So.
I look at it as community service, but.
Yeah, okay, well, that's okay. You can look at it any way you want.
If we have a motion to call the question? Second?
What's the motion?
To have listening sessions? Is that what the motion is?
The motion was to have, let's put together meetings at Jackson,
Community meetings,
Madison,
Jackson,
let's fill up the gyms at the community. Let's get it.
I'll second the question. I just think that's completely in the purview of the district administrator already. And I don't think it needs to be a motion in a second. It just needs to be a directive.
I would agree. I think it just has to be done.
Okay.
Well, you get to vote, okay? So, because it's been called and seconded, so let's vote on that motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay.
Should have voted nay. That was a good one to vote nay.
I'd like to make
So even though I didn't hear all ayes, I heard 0 nays, which leaves me confuzzled. I will tell you that, but obviously it passed. So I think you could have anticipated that anyway.
Yeah. I want to make a motion, or have Biff do a motion, that we.
Are you moving that?
Yeah, well, no, yeah, because he's more informed about the nature of the process of having a committee of informed citizens. Like people who build buildings and people who, serve, occupy the buildings, people that, have different points of view. To just get them, to just have them, work the way the county board.
Brush it out. I understand what you're saying. I'm a little concerned at that last motion just because we're only gonna do Jackson and Madison.
Well, those are the two that were on shopping block as far as neighborhood schools.
But
We can do more. It's a directive. Let's do it.
okay, and that's what I'm saying is,
Yeah, right.
You should anticipate them having.
people have no idea the scope of this project other than what they're hearing on the street. But, the Wilson, Washington Middle School thing, building.
Sure, Franklin as well, neighborhood.
Franklin and Riverview, I think those are all opportunities to get information out about possibilities. So I don't think we can just stop with Madison to Jackson.
Sure. I would really, and I think what Carrie was talking about in the motion, I think is a good idea, but I would really like to get the public, I'd like to get some of these meetings going before we start developing a committee.
Do you want to make that motion to put together a committee of, let's say, 12 people? It seemed to work for some.
Let me do some research on how people
All right,
were put on that committee for the county. Most of them were retired builders and different people and people who had looked at building plans and checked things over and, give a different perspective.
I think the listening sessions are great. I think it's, wherever you hold them, it's open to anybody, not just a specific school. It's open to the entire community to come and listen to what they are. But I am going again, and I'm going to beat the dead rug if we have to. I am not in favor of just giving them the CISA 10, this is the way it has to be program. We have, you got, Tony even admitted in conversation that he liked the Access program, but it didn't go anyplace. So that was never a proposal to this community. CISA 10 now has a proposal. I'm going to make a motion that we at least get 1 or 2 more at next meeting after Mr. Abel helps me wordsmith this. Because This community deserves the right to know that we as a board did our due diligence to get the best program out there from whomever can present that. We need to contact school districts. What did you do? Who did you use? Was it successful? Did you like them? There's many of them that did not use CISA 10. There's many of them that used other industrial programs, companies. It's our job as a board to scope those out and come to the public with, here's our options, ladies and gentlemen. This is why we chose this company. This is why we chose this company. This is why we chose this company. Because this is what they're going to afford us to do, not just one.
I appreciate that, Keith, and by all means, and that's what we're gonna do, and that's what we're gonna do, but with respect to the fact that you just got on the board, that's kind of what we did already when we chose between Nexus and CISA 10, and we looked at taking on some of the stuff ourselves. We could have done it ourselves. I think Matt was a big proponent to
I
that.
can talk to it if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
They represent us as an owner representative, so they just represent us. So we're just saying that we have an agreement with them, that they're trying to get the best interest of us, and we can use that how we want to. What you're kind of motioning to is like, well, let's have other contractors or contracting agencies be involved in presenting ideas of how to fix the facilities or new facilities. I don't quite know where you're going with that.
We have CISA 10 for a facilities audit and some programs. The directors put the programs together for us, but we asked for a facilities
Audit, yep. We did that and that's done.
from CISA 10.
Yes.
Did we do it for 2 other companies? Our policy says 3.
No, we did not do it.
Well, then
We evaluated other options prior to though.
So you want a different auditing company to look at the bricks and tell us that they need.
yeah, it could be entirely different.
Okay.
So
It could be,
I understand what you're saying.
yeah, it could be similar, it could be entirely
I'm not
different.
for it.
Maybe they don't see the same thing as
We are-
CISA 10.
We did pay Nexus to do their auditing as well, on some of the roofs.
We also paid $65,000 for CISA 10.
To do all the square footage.
Which was
of
the
whole
least,
district. And then they took the information that we had from Nexus before that as well to give us more information. So it's quite a comprehensive plan. Obviously, the book is right over there. But if you want more, I
And
understand you.
we've already gone through a lot of it. But like I said, I understand that you weren't here. I mean, we're gonna be revisiting a lot of stuff that we already did
Okay.
by doing this, but go ahead.
you know, with the action that we took, there's no plan. You know, we were asking CISA 10 about how we might digest this and approach it. So really, we're just back to the drawing board with, we got an audit of our facilities.
Correct.
Now, we can ask for another audit.
Correct.
And take another year studying the condition of the buildings to see if it's identical or different, and then we can, I mean, all I'm saying is we're back to, now we finally know the condition of our facilities. We could say, let's get a second opinion on.
I get that. That's why I'm saying I think that's more fair to the taxpayers that we did do that homework.
So, you know, I don't see that we have a proposal on the table, other than we know the condition of our facilities.
We don't.
And then how do we proceed with it?
That's it.
So it's back down to now, okay, what do we want to do? Let's get engaging the community and say, what do you think we should do? Here's how bad they are. I mean, we'll go where it goes.
They're falling apart, let's waste another year doing an audit, sounds great.
It's true, but that's the way we're going right now, so let's, I mean, yeah, I know.
Gotta be political.
I agree with your thinking about asking other school districts about how they handle shrinking enrollments and closing schools and things like that, because I didn't hear a great roar come out of Green Bay when they closed 3 schools just recently. But I think, well, I do know, because I called some people there, they really kind of worked that in advance. It wasn't just like, oh, you know, the wise men on the board got together with the superintendent and said, okay, we're closing this school and we're closing that school. It wasn't like that. It was like they worked with their community so that when they closed those schools, people said, yeah, well, we hate to see them go, but gee, you know, I mean, we don't want to be paying, you know, all sorts of money. So I think we should, I would vote against hiring another auditor. But I do think, in addition to having said, I do think we should ask other school districts how they handle problems that are similar to ours. And we might get some, I always find, when I go to a convention, and listen to other people talk, I get smarter. So the other thing is that we haven't even gone through that audit ourselves. I've sat and looked at, the lists, and I think, gee, do we really, for example, a fairly obvious one. I looked at the list on Jefferson School and I thought, put a cafeteria on there for $4 million? That just seemed like, gee, how many kids go to Jefferson, and it would be nice. And I mentioned that to the superintendent, he said, well, you want to have a 21st century school. I just want to have safe and functional schools where the ceiling isn't falling in, on the second floor at Lincoln. So I'm not, I think we need to go through and say, pitch that out. That's just not in this round for sure. Or do we really need to do what CISA has recommended in some cases?
We have the ability to.
We haven't talked about that.
You can't help yourself, Kerry. When we went through this whole list, and they gave us a list of everything they categorized it in what was safety, what was necessary. And we did kind of go through all that stuff and look, okay? Now, I understand that you can't help yourself when it comes to, insulting Jim or in his plan as to what's going on. And honestly, like I said before, I'm getting tired of it. We have a plan moving forward?
No. We don't.
Nothing, right now. The only thing we're gonna be doing right now is that's on the table is to be getting some input from the community. I don't see anywhere else where this argument is gonna go any further.
Oh, okay.
Wait for something.
Well, yeah, let's not prolong it. Let's get on these meetings.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking to see if we have any further action on this.
I'll try to make this short. And you have a study, we have the needs. If there is a school where we're afraid a ceiling is going to fall in or something is very bad, that's where I think my focus would be, because we're talking about leaving kids in buildings for at least 2 years. If something is that bad, I would say that's something we should address, find 3 companies to bid on it. They may go in and say, well, it's not that, or you don't have to do that. Sometimes one person's eye is a little different than somebody else's eyes. But if there are severe things like that, my thought would be those are things we should be looking at. We don't know if that building is going to be empty in 2 years or not. But if it's that serious that the ceiling may fall in, that is something that, in my head, we should be looking at right now. And then you get 3 bids to fix them.
Lincoln High School needs a new roof, it's $600,000, yeah. It was pushed over on the last thing. It's like there's too much talking going on, but anyways, that's the reality of it.
That's what we're coming to.
We have the information.
Let's move on.
Okay. All right, so moving on to new business, number 6, we have the personnel report.
Send it to me if you want. To the committee? It didn't go through committee, did it?
This did not go through committee. That would have been my
Okay.
preference. I was told there were positions on here that we desperately needed to approve rather than send it to committee.
I make a motion to approve the personnel report.
We have a motion to approve the personnel. We have a second to approve.
I understand that what you're saying, and I would have liked that, but obviously I'll take the direction of the director of HR that he wanted to get the approval. So,
Yeah.
all due respect, I'd like to approve.
Any discussion?
That was my discussion.
Yeah, I know that was yours, but you had moved it, so I wasn't, gonna squelch that. I would point out that under professional staff, 2 of these positions will be positions, they'll be provisional positions. In other words, we sign off, you literally allow me to sign off with the DPI to give them a license for 1 year until they fulfill the requirements to become fully certified. I always like to point those out so that everybody understands it.
You did that last time. That was good.
Yeah, okay. All right. So I would like to send them, but there you go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed say no. No. I would have liked to send them, so. Okay, so those are approved. We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Before we adjourn, let me just say thank you to all of you gentlemen. It really was my goal for us to get presentations, then questions and motions, and it really went well, so I appreciate all that. Okay, having had the chance to say that, we are adjourned.
You conduct a good meeting, Chris.
Well, thank you, sir.
You're a little slow, but it's good meeting.
I had to catch it.
Yeah.